Hello and welcome to Free Fiddle Lessons. Today we're going to do a Patreon request lesson. I think we'll make this actually a small series on how to play chords on the fiddle, how to play fiddle backup. So I'm going to show you one position of 3 chords that I play today, and that's adaptable to some string pairs, so you'll see how that works out. But basically I'm going to show you how one way to play chords in the keys of A, D, or G, and a little bit of music theory explaining some of that. So in the music theory segment, I find that often, unless you have a background in music theory, have taken a course, it often takes exposure a couple of times to these ideas before you really grasp them and remember them. So feel free to listen to different segments of the lesson and do that several different times, or use some of the other resources. Musictheory.net is a great resource for learning all about music theory online for free, so check that out. The only thing that you really need to know to be able to work out chords for a major tune is how to play the major scale in that key. So we're going to start in the key of A, and we'll play the A major scale that starts on open A. Now each one of these notes we could give a number to correspond with which order it is in the scale. So the open A would be 1, B would be 2, C sharp would be 3, D would be 4, E would be 5, F sharp would be 6, G sharp would be 7, and high A would be the octave, or 8. Now we could also play this scale down lower, starting on low A, and we'd have the same numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Notice there that we have the high third finger positions when we're playing the A scale in the lower register. So within a major key, the most common chords you're going to encounter are chords that are built on the first note of the scale, the fourth note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. Those are popularly referred to as 1, 4, and 5 chords. So if you hear 1, 4, 5, or you hear chord players talking to each other and they say, "Hey, let's go to the 4 chord," that's what they mean. They mean the chord that's built on the fourth note of the scale of the key that we're playing in. And that's useful because particularly for guitar players or other instruments that might use a capo, they can think the capo basically changes the key that they're playing in, and so they can play the 4 chord of whatever key they're playing in, and it'll be the same as, if they place their capo correctly, the same as the 4 chord that everybody else is playing, without them having to think, okay, they're playing in D, but I'm playing in C, and they are saying, let's play the G chord, and so I have to play, they don't have to work out quite so many things in their head. Plus, the different chords have a different feel at any particular moment in a tune. So a 1 chord feels like home. The A chord in the key of A feels like home, and whereas the 4 or the 5 chords, or 2 or 3, or other chords in the scale, are going to have a different feel at any particular time. Which really, the most important thing that I can tell you is all that matters for playing backup is that you play something that you think sounds good, and you play it in rhythm with everybody else that you're playing with, and that you play chords or accompaniment notes that work with the chords that other people are playing in your session. So there's some finer tuned guidelines in terms of how to play chords in a particular backup style. I'll just throw it here right now that at a lot of Irish sessions there's usually only 1 chord player, and that chord player is never a fiddle player. So it could be that a session in your area doesn't mind if a fiddle plays backup, but most commonly at Irish sessions, there's only one chord player at a time, and that's usually a guitar or a bouzouki. And often in, really traditional, older Irish music, there isn't often much accompaniment at all. And it's really a melody-focused tradition. So it's important to know the people that you're playing with, especially if it's a public jam, as opposed to you getting together with some of your own friends, at your house. It's important to know what the traditions are around chord playing and fiddle chord playing in that tradition. So I'd say that, sort of the opposite end of the spectrum is bluegrass, where the fiddle player is playing chord backup almost the whole time, along with everybody else, except whoever's, maybe taking a solo at that time, or taking a break at that time. So there can be a lot of variety across different styles of music. So let's go back to figuring all this stuff out. So we said the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. So in the key of A, we have A, B, C sharp, D. So our A was our 1 chord. Our D chord will be the 4 chord, and after D comes E. I should really have done it this way. A, 1, 2, 3. 4 chord will be D, and 5 chord would be E. And we could count that way up any scale for any major key that we're trying to figure out chords for. What notes are in those chords? Well, you can memorize what notes are in those chords, and often that is actually a really good starting out strategy. Just say, okay, I'm going to memorize that an A chord is these notes, and a D major chord is these notes. When we say, I should just note that when we say an A chord or an A scale, and we don't qualify, usually what we mean is the major. So an A major scale, the A scale. Whereas if I was talking about a minor scale or a minor chord, I would always say A minor. That's helpful just to be aware of. So we can memorize the notes in the chord. We can also figure them out. And actually I'm going to use my hand again here. So we're looking for 3 notes that are part of any chord. The first note is going to be whatever note the name of the chord is. So in this case, A. And then we're going to go up the scale that we're working in order. And I'm going to put the notes that we're going to skip down below on my fingers. So A, B, C sharp, D, E. So our finger point notes are the notes in the A major chord. A, C sharp, and E. Those can appear in any order. And we're only going to pick 1 or 2 of them when we're playing the fiddle. We're not going to use them all. And because we can only play, unless we're really rocking across the strings, we can only play 2 notes at once. Let's do another example. So for the D chord, the 4 chord in the key of A, we'll start on the D and we'll go up. We can still use the A major scale to go up. And we'll say D, E, F sharp, G, A. So D, F sharp, and A are the notes of the D chord. We can also do the E chord, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, E, G sharp, and B are the notes of the E chord. So as I said, you can memorize those. A is A, C sharp, E. D is D, F sharp, A. And E is E, G sharp, and B. And you'll probably end up memorizing some of them anyway, and then it can be useful to be able to figure them out. But the ones that you use frequently, you might just end up using, or you might just learn the finger positions and not think about so much what things are called. So I said we were going to pick any 2 of those notes. For the A chord that we're going to start out with, we are going to pick the 3rd and 5th notes, C sharp and E. Oh, but I should just back up and say that you might see versions of those chords, and I wrote this out in the music to accompany this lesson, the sheet music, that you might see these chords. They can be in any position, just as we could take the A scale down low. We could pick A, C sharp, and E down low. We could put them in a different order. They don't have to be in that order. It could be C sharp, E, A or E, A, C sharp. So just be aware that it can be in many different forms, those chords. So let's find our A chord. We're going to be using 2 strings at a time for all 3 chords in every phase of this lesson. And we're going to start on the A and the E strings. So we're going to pick, I said, 2 of those notes. We could pick A and E. Open the first and the 5th note of the chord, or the bottom and the top of the chord, A, C sharp, E, bottom and top notes. We are instead, however, most of the time going to pick C sharp and E. I just like the sound a little better. It's a little closer. That beautiful sound. When you're starting out, it might work just to play right on the beat of whatever tune you're playing. So I've got a little pattern that fits right in with Boil 'em Cabbage Down, but you can also take any of the sheet music for any of the tunes and work with that and play along with the backup recordings as a way to practice this. So there's lots of practice materials available to you. So that's 4 A chords. Let's play that again. So 2nd finger's on C sharp, the regular 2nd finger position, and I'm playing open E. Make sure your finger's tilted up enough so you're not bumping into that E string. You can give it a little more pop by dropping that 2nd finger down just after you start playing. Let's try that again. Or sometimes I'll go from 1 to 2. Let's learn the D chord now. So this is the trickiest chord in this position. We're going to use the D and the F sharp of the D chord. So putting the 3rd finger down instead of the 2nd on the A string, and putting a 1st finger down on the E string on F sharp. And boy, you'll learn quickly if your fingers aren't in tune, it's not going to sound so great. So it might help you when you're starting out. Make sure you can play comfortably on the A and the E strings together, and play each note separately before you try to play them together if you're having trouble getting them in tune. You can also, of course, pick one of these notes to play and have sort of a backup drone effect where you're just maybe playing the A and then the D and the E. You could play the root of the chord. That would be called playing the 1st note of each chord. But we're going to concentrate on these 2 finger chords. So let's review. We've got, let's play 2 A chords this time and then 2 D chords. So we'll start with C sharp and E. Let's do that again. 1, 2, ready, go. Back to the A chord. And then let's learn the 5 chord, the E chord. For this, we're going to keep the open E, and we're going to use the B on the A string. So here we have the B down below the E, and we're not playing the middle note at all. We're playing the top and bottom notes of the chord. That's got a really open sound, and as an additional little piece of music theory, whenever you're playing, the middle note of the chord is what makes it major or minor. So you can play a chord that's neither major nor minor, or either major or minor, you could think of it either way, by playing the 1st and the 3rd notes and skipping the middle one. So you could play an A chord could work either as A major or A minor by playing the A and the E, the D chord by playing the D and the A, and the E or E minor chord by playing the E or the B, the E and the B, and skipping that middle note. So let's try that E chord again, playing the B and the E, and again it could be major or minor. In this case it's a major chord. So some of you might be wondering, okay, so couldn't we play for the D chord, couldn't we play the A and F sharp? Those are 2 notes in the D chord. And we could. That would be easier because we'd only be using one finger rather than the two fingers for our D chord. But I don't think it sounds as nice. Here's that way with only one finger. So A chord, A chord with the C sharp, the D chord with only one finger, so the D chord that way doesn't really fit. And a lot of the time the chords that are going to sound good to us are the ones where the notes are really close together. So that's why we're sticking on two strings, trying to find the notes that, you know, that fit really closely together. So let's play 2 beats of A chord, 2 beats of D, 2 beats of A chord, 2 beats of E. And then we'll play the ending of a phrase. So that kind of gets us to the middle. We have that unresolved, hanging feeling of the 5 chord, the E chord. And now let's play the 1 chord, 4 chord, and 1, 5, 1 a little faster. So that'll be 2 beats of A, 2 beats of D, 1 A, 1 E, and 2 A. So we'll have A, D, and A, E, and 2 A. So I like to often end with that open A chord, A and E, no middle note, and no fingers down. Just feels very settled. So let's do the ending of that, the 1A, 1E, and 2A, since that's a little faster. And it kind of just looks like walking down the string. Second finger, first finger, and open. Open. So ready, go. 2, 1, and open. Again, it's A, E, A. Or 1, 5, 1. From the beginning, 2 to A. D chord, 4. 1 chord. The 5 chord, E. Back to 1. 4 chord, D. And that ending, 1 chord, 5, E, and back to 1. All right, let's run through that also in the key of D and the key of G. So in the key of D, our D major scale, we have, I guess I should play it. We have D, E, F sharp is the 3rd note, G is 4, A is 5, B is 6, C sharp is 7, and D is 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So our D chord is the 1 chord, and we'll have D, E, F sharp, G, A. You might remember that from the A part. We start using the same D chord, D, F sharp, and A. However, we're going to play it like we played the A chord in the first section of the lesson, but over on the D and the A strings instead. So we're going to use the same finger shapes that we used on the A and the E strings. We're going to move them to the D and the A strings, and we're going to be suddenly playing in the key of D. Let's just run through the theory of the other chords. Our A chord will be the 5 chord, D, E, F sharp, G, A. So A is our 5 chord and G is our 4 chord. So A chord, just like in before, is A, C sharp, and E. The G chord, however, we haven't had. So G, A, B, in the key of D it's C sharp, and then D. G, B, D. And that's our G chord. So again, we could pick the G and the B, we can pick the B and the D, we can pick the G and the D. Any of those notes are going to make a G chord. So when we move our pattern over, we get this. There's our D chord. Second finger on the D string, open A. Let's do 2 of those. 1, 2, ready, go. And then the G chord, 3 and 1. Third finger on D, first finger on A. And then back to D chord, 1 chord. And now the 5 chord key is A. This time it's open A and E on the D string, first finger. Let's do those 4 again. From the beginning, so 2 on D, 2 on G, 2 on D, 2 on A. So ready, go, D. And we'll have the same chord progression going to the end. So it'll be D, the 1 chord, G, the 4 chord, and then that quick ending of 1, 5, 1. So let's do the second half. 2 on D, 4 chord ending. We'll do 1, 5, and 1. And again, we'll use the open notes there. Let's do the whole thing. 1, 2, ready, 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 1, 5, 1. We could take it over to the G string, and we're playing then in the key of G. If we use the same patterns on G and D, a little out of tune. So same patterns. So the chords there we have in the key of G, we have G is the 1 chord, A, B, C is the 4 chord, D is the 5 chord. We've had G before, G, B, D. We've had D before, D, F sharp, A. What we haven't had is the C chord, so let's look at that one quickly. C, D, E, F sharp, G. C, E, G is the C chord. Now some people, so you've encountered this, some people will build their chord off of the scale of the same name. And that's perfectly okay too. So they would say that the major chord is the first, third, and fifth notes of the major scale with the same name. So looking at it that way, our C chord, they'd think of a C scale, C, D, E, F, G, and they'd pick the first, third, and fifth notes. And that's a perfectly good way too. The only way I'm doing it this way is when you get into some other chords in a key that aren't major. If you're working in the scale of the key that you're in, then you have those notes already in your mind, because the chords that are going to be used in a scale, for the most part, are going to be drawn off of notes that are actually in that scale. C, E, and G, C, D, E, F, G, first, third, and fifth notes of the C major scale, or we can think of it as inside our G scale, C, D, E, F sharp, G, C, E, G. Either way, we get the same notes. So let's talk quickly a little bit about rhythm, because you might, I'd recommend starting out on that beat just to try and get your fingers to go the right places. But also what I love about playing backup is playing different rhythms. So I've illustrated some of those at the end of the sheet music. A classic one is called the shuffle bow backup, and I'll just play I think a G chord here, right in the middle. But you can play open D, something. Actually, maybe I'll play the open D and open A, because that's a good place for you to start, and then you can play right along with me. Playing D and A, and in the music I just wrote it out with a G, just because it was easier than writing out with all the full chords. But you can use these rhythms lots of different ways. So the first rhythm that I show in the sheet music is the shuffle bow rhythm. And that's just a 1 measure repeat rhythm, and it sounds like this. over, same thing. And so if you're doing that with our pattern, there's that. So you notice at the end we have one shuffle bow for each chord, and then two for the final. So another one I like to use, and the second and third patterns are variations of this, is the syncopated rhythm. I've talked about it as kangaroo, kangaroo, kitty, because I put some of these patterns into my melody playing as well. So I talked about that in a real lesson. Sorry, I was going to start on open D and open A. So I'm just going back and forth with my bow, but I'm doing a long bow, so I'm putting accents in different places. Long, short, short, long, short, short, and then even. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, even. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, even. And this sounds pretty good when we get moving. And I would typically mix and match these patterns as I'm going through. The other is a variation, so rather than playing the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 as separate notes, I'd play them as two held notes, so like this. And you might mix it and match those. If I'm playing jigs, we can play again on the beat. We can be playing sometimes with the whole beat and sometimes with the subdivisions of the beat. Like this. Something like that. And then there's a syncopated pattern I do sometimes use. Hard for me to do it slowly, actually. So there's a little skipped beat and a little skipped bow. I'm doing down, up, down, up, pause, and then up again with 5 more notes. So I'll do it in time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Up again. Oh, I got mixed up. So I tend to do just like a little tiny lift of my bow. Really, it's just letting it come back off the string during that pause. In some ways, I'm even like dragging it across the string. I'm just not putting any pressure on it. So there you go.